Hello, everybody, and thank you very much for joining us for this webinar brought to you today by SINC USA. My name is Jason Senimore. I am the Chief Product Officer here at SINC, and I am absolutely delighted to be joined by a first-class panel, whom I will introduce to you shortly, for today's discussion on the key to building effective communities. 2020 highlighted the true need and impact a community can have on your company's success by simply engaging and providing education around your products. Building an effective community creates a platform for your loyal customers to advocate for your brand. But how do you do this effectively? How do you manage? How do you monetize those communities? As mentioned to you, we have a great panel of experts here for you today, which I have the pleasure of introducing to you now. First and foremost, Julie O'Brien, the Chief Marketing Officer at Attack IQ.
Hello.
Hi there, Julie. If you can just do me the pleasure of introducing yourself formally to the audience, please.
Sure. Thanks so much, Jason. So again, I'm Julie O'Brien, and I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at Attack IQ, where I've been just for about a year. I decided to switch over into the cybersecurity industry right at the start of the pandemic. Figured what could possibly go wrong, right? So I'm pleased to say a year later, I'm having a ball. Prior to that, I was at Nutanix for 5 years and had the pleasure of working with a great team that built out a couple of different communities that I'll talk about today. And I took some of those knowledge and insights over with me to Attack IQ.
Fantastic, thank you very much. Delighted to have you. Second is May Mitchell, the Senior Vice President of Marketing at iBoss. May, hello.
Hi, how are you?
Very well, thank you very much for joining. If you could again, just please formally introduce yourself to the audience, please.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jason and the SINC team. My name is May Mitchell. I'm based in San Jose, California. Currently head of marketing for a company called iBoss. And my entire career, I've been in cybersecurity. Came from very large companies such as Symantec. Then I went to another fantastic startup called Cylance. Joined iBoss about 3 months ago. And iBoss, what we do is we provide a cloud solution that connects users directly and efficiently to the cloud applications, very efficiently, and it's ideal for the modern remote workforce. So happy to be here.
Thank you very much indeed. And last but certainly by no means least, Mr. Carlos Doty, founder and CEO of Martech Alliance. Carlos, please join us on the stage. There he is.
Hi, Jason. Thank you very much for having me, and thanks to the SINC team for putting this together. I'm the founder and the CEO here at the Martech Alliance. As it sounds, we do marketing technology. We're a learning solutions business. We offer a range of events in person when there's not a pandemic on the go, as well as virtual, and then we also offer a range of digital learning programs. Prior to this, I spent more than a decade as a marketing director for a FTSE 250 company. Worked a lot across events and across learning. And across the common thread there has always been, what is a community? How do you build one? How do you really take something beyond just one day, one moment, one great engagement to something that's ongoing?
Fantastic, definitely something we're going to dive into. So folks, the agenda for today's discussion is pretty straightforward. We're going to cover off 4 key bases: what defines a true community, how to begin building a community, how to effectively manage a community, and how to extract value and monetize the community. We want to answer any questions you may have throughout, so please do utilize the Q&A feature to submit your questions into the panel, and we will address them as a priority accordingly. You do also have the chat feature in Zoom as well. And one thing that we love to see during these sessions is the collaboration going on amongst the attendees in the chat, commenting on some of the comments that have been made by the panelists, and also just sharing some information amongst yourselves if there's any information that you feel would be valuable for your peers and fellow attendees to be able to consume. So without further ado, let's jump right into the line of questionings with the panel. And I'm going to open up, obviously, around the topic of what defines the true community. Julie, I'll start with you as you were first on the stage. In your opinion, what do you feel are the characteristics that should define a true community?
Well, I think, just as human beings, we want to be part of like-minded peer groups, right? And so as we were building out the community at Nutanix, it really just evolved from people who are passionate around data center technologies and thinking about new ways to work in the data center, to manage, build, run, helping each other solve problems, right? Sharing information on potential vendors, on potential tips, tricks, lessons learned. And as we evolved, into the community that we're building at Attack IQ, it really started with an academy approach and education, which I also think is one of the core tenets, right? How do we learn from each other, and how do we learn from maybe pitfalls or mistakes or painful lessons along the way? How do we share information back to vendors so that if we find something in the product that could be better, we're working together as a peer group to share that information and ideally move solutions forward that will solve like our pain points as practitioners. So, it's like-minded people coming together, learning from each other, building their own networks, maybe even building their own brands, because it's easier to do that sometimes in a virtual environment, especially if you're more of an introvert than an extrovert. And being part of something that's just important to you. So that's what I've seen.
Very well said. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. May, I'm going to come to you and I'm going to add a little bit of extra flavor to the question and say,
Okay.
So what are the characteristics, but also why do you feel someone would want to participate in a community?
Yeah, great question. I think, first of all, there's different flavors of communities. There could be internal, right? And then such as, there could be one for, when I say internal, it could be women, you could have a women group within the company. And there's a ton of stuff we can share on that side, but also externally, there could be business level, there could be technical, it could be by product family. We did all of this over at Symantec very effectively, but a lot of it has to do with collaboration, something that we can all associate ourselves with, some type of identity. We feel very passionate as a thought leader. I feel very passionate because I think that there's a better way of solving this. And am I going crazy thinking about this, or is there other people, thinking about this too? And chances are the answer is yes, right? So it's about you being a thought leader, being able to share that passion, and also diversity. When you get a bunch of people together that share the same thing, everyone thinks differently, and you get all these cool ideas coming together. It's that creativity, and it's being able to solve something together. And also before the pandemic, a lot of people, believe it or not, they were all remote anyways, right? I come from the cybersecurity world, and there's great talent everywhere, and they just want to be able to talk to someone, at all hours of the night. And so they just want to be associated with something, with a common cause.
Agreed, very much so. And Carlos, I'm going to come to you for a similar thought and add another little bit of flavor to your question as well. So what do you think defines a true community? And secondly, what are some examples of communities you feel are good benchmarks for inspiration and success?
Sure. I think what May said, the word identity, I think is the big one. And so belonging to a tribe is part of who you really are. I think one of the ways to kind of identify real tribes, real communities, it's going to sound weird, but the ridiculous jokes that are only funny amongst those people. So it's these kind of obscure kind of memes or jokes that only if you're part of that small, finite audience do you really understand it and appreciate it. And so having a place where you can share, engage, you can moan, you can be honest. I think that the truthful honesty part, I think, is massive. And so if there's an environment where you truly feel they're your people, you speak as you are, you talk in a way that's more meaningful, and you share more value, because you're not trying to impress, you're not trying to be anything you're not. It really is at the heart of it, that kind of that tribal instinct and that sense of belonging. In terms of good communities, I mean, I'm not saying there aren't many, but I think the one that really jumps out to me is one we've talked about once before, actually, which is kind of sneakerheads, people that really love their trainers. And I think one of the best examples of this is StockX, which is a company that's exploded, that's literally gone from creating what is really a spin-off of an eBay, where people can buy and sell trainers. And the exponential growth of that business shows you the size of community that's grown and exploded. And so this is as simple as people wanting to wear cool trainers or wanting to belong to a type of look, feel, back to that identity. It's not always just from a sort of work perspective. can you find those people that will listen to you, that will care about what you've got to say and offer something of impact and value? It might be the conversations that you don't want to bore your friends and family with. These people find them interesting and engaging.
Definitely. It's when you've got members of the community who are always actively looking to see what other members are contributing to the community. That's when I feel you've got a solid community in base, right? It's you make a good reference to something like StockX or something, but to want to constantly open your app or to constantly go into a platform and see what other people are saying, I think that's the defining factor, right? Not somebody that's just kind of like, I'm part of this, but I don't get involved. But that active kind of engagement is important. And I love that word tribe. I think that's fantastic. And, you know, these other words that we're identifying here, identity, collaboration, right? Some of these, I think, are the real true characteristics. It's funny because obviously Julie and May, obviously they're in the cybersecurity space. One great example I've seen personally is the camaraderie within the cybersecurity community. Now, there are obviously various communities within that, but one thing they have a common goal, two common goals, or the common goal is they're fighting the same fight. They're fighting the same fight internally to get the respect and the stature that security deserves, and they're fighting the same fight externally against the same attackers. Mm-hmm. And that builds this camaraderie amongst the community, which allows for a greater level of collaboration and sharing of information, which I feel, again, kind of leads towards a common goal, another characteristic, right? There has to be a common goal in place, whether that's through personal kind of like success, achievement or development, or a group goal that they're looking to achieve through that collaboration. And those are some of the things that we've seen here at SINC, actually, and working with people like May and Julie, that kind of like make those defining characteristics. That's great. So all this is fantastic. We know what kind of like makes the community, you know, some great kind of keywords in there as well. But obviously, it all has to start somewhere. So as we kind of switch the focus towards how to begin building a community and effective communities, Julie, you've mentioned in your prior roles, you know, it's always been kind of a bedrock of what you've been doing. So talk to us a little bit about kind of how much emphasis you individually in the organizations that you've represented up until now and Attack IQ have placed on building a strong community of customers and prospects, even prior to the events of 2020 and everything going virtual, where that need kind of accelerated a bit more.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I think there's just like so much to unpack here. I don't even know where to begin. Because like May was saying earlier, I mean, there's so many different ways that you can like consider what your community strategy really is, and so many different audiences. But like, as I think back to like early days at Nutanix, the first community was really about building a tribe. I love that word. We actually named one of our communities X Tribe, because we were really trying to convey that we're all in this together. It is a like-minded group of people, be part of the tribe. But sometimes it just starts with your technology champions and identifying a group of people that you feel are going to be your passionate advocates. And it could be as simple as even creating a Slack channel for them to be closer to you, closer to the brand, closer to each other. And that could be your jumping off point. It could be 25 to 50 people connected, meeting monthly, sharing best practices, learning about the roadmap, sharing their experiences in whatever the particular industry is or areas that you are involved in. And then from there, it can actually mature and blossom into a bigger peer group, right? And so when we initially started with our platform approach, the first platform that we used was Lithium, and it served us well. We grew to tens of thousands of community members that were on that platform. But then over time, the community manager who was running, who's a great guy, and I'm sure he'd be happy to share his best practices with anyone who want to reach out to him. He's very much about giving back into the community. Angelo Luciani. He realized we just weren't able to do as much customization as we'd like to be able to do and be more agile with the platform. So after some investigation, we ended up switching over to Incited, and that's the platform that the Nutanix Next community is running on right now. So there was a unique set of goals, I would say, that grew that particular community over time. As I look at what we're doing at Attack IQ, part of our brand is to give back to the cyber community at large. The company joined a community called the Center of Threat Informed Defense to do exactly what you said earlier, Jason, which is like participate in research that can then be shared out, that knowledge on how to increase cyber defenses against adversaries that were known or maybe even, unknown adversaries. And that starts with education. And so our community approach took an education approach at Attack IQ, where we built out Attack IQ Academy. We have 13,000 people in 160 countries that are part of the academy. And then we used that larger group of people to invite into more of an interactive community platform built on Influitive, which some people may be familiar with. And that provides both discussion amongst peers, but also some gamification and incentives. So if you provide feedback into roadmap or into a beta class for a new course that's coming, then you'll generate X number of points that you can donate to charity or eventually accumulate for swag. But you get to decide, you have the flexibility to do that. And so that's kind of another different way to think about community. For us, it was, okay, we're building a platform of education. It's on a traditional LMS, Thought Industries, but then we're inviting kind of the power users, the super users, to really get involved with us and to share feedback on what we're developing in part of the Influitive platform. And at some point, who knows, maybe we will add a traditional kind of community platform as part of that. But it really, again, I'm just sharing these examples because they're a little bit different from where Nutanix was starting and where we're starting as a smaller cybersecurity company, different industry, different, kind of thinking around building our community.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. No, that's fantastic insight. And I think, one thing that I picked up on there as well, when we kind of switched the focus towards how we're managing communities, incentivizing the collaboration is obviously a great way to get things going before it then just starts evolving very organically, just through the need and desire from the attendees as well. So, or the participants, I should say. Thank you very much. Carlos, going to come over to you again. So I suppose it's a bit of a tricky one, but those looking to start from scratch, those who are looking to kind of like, establish a strong community, whether that be amongst existing customers or prospect bases, etc. What are some of the steps you feel that they can take to begin those, early stages of building out said community?
I think the first one is to really work out if you're doing it because it's become a little bit hot right now, or if you're really committed to this, and really understanding what's in the market. You don't have to own the community. And so there might be amazing people that are doing a better job than maybe you can anytime soon. And it might make more sense to actually collaborate versus trying to create your own isolated space. I appreciate we would all, from a business perspective, love to have the community we own, but actually part of community is also meant to be less about community, less about ownership and more about bringing people together. And so I would actually just start with doing more of an understanding of, are there other players existing that you could buddy up with before going from scratch yourself? Then really understanding, are you all in on this, and are you dedicated to it in such a way that this isn't going to sort of evolve but fall by the wayside because you haven't got headcount, you haven't got the real investment, or you're not really committed to it. I mean, I think there's an interesting case just recently with the New York Times abandoning their Facebook group. I don't know if anyone's seen that, where they had a Facebook group of 77,000 members, but the moderation on it was so time consuming and created this massive debate around politics that they've actually abandoned it and handed it back to the community, which obviously is a terrible scenario. And that's the New York Times, which obviously has deep resources. And so these things can build pretty quickly if you're good at it. Are you really ready and committed to do this? You want to talk later on about monetization, but if there isn't a direct cash amount sat behind this right away, is it going to fall by the wayside of your priorities later on? So the first thing would just be, are you completely all in? Once you're all in and you've got dedicated resources, people, time, you've got some people to buddy up with, hopefully some existing, perhaps smaller groups, but also then finding those advocates, those individuals, those real brand ambassadors for you. And from a practical perspective, I've seen some good programs where literally people talk about their founding 50 community, and finding 50 people. Ideally, they're based scattered all over the world, and they can be your localized ambassadors that can actually take your brand, can take your community, and can bring it to life, both physical and digital. And specifically, what you might do is sort of identify who cares, who's passionate about our space, who's in this tribe. You probably know some of these people, you're probably chatting already with them. And then how do you develop those relationships where they want to work with you in a way that's beneficial to them? Now, I'd say if they're probably the right people, it's not going to be too difficult because they're going to care anyway. They're just going to want to do it because. But at the same time, you want to give something back. And so, again, specific bits around whether it's a swag pack, whether it's giving them a specific title on LinkedIn to say one of the founding 50. If you have other products or other services, can you actually bring them in and give them free or discounted rates to that? If you run events, going to have free passes. And then taking it further and actually going, all right, well, can we give them actual investment that they can invest locally? And specifically, one program we're building at the moment is going city by city, who's our local ambassador, and saying, right, there is a dedicated cash pot there for you to go and get drunk. Go and get drunk with a bunch of people in our space. It's not, yes, people are going to learn, but it's about chatting and meeting people and engaging. And as the pandemic opens up again, or sorry, not opens up, rather disappears and we get back to in person, then we want to go very big on actual communities in person and really trying to bring that localized element. Especially one view I've got is that obviously the kind of flying in for lots of events may look very different, and you may be more interested in something that's a lot closer to you. Mm-hmm. And so having localized presence as we move forwards will be the other thing.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So thank you very much. Yeah, we've certainly seen examples of that obviously prior to the pandemic, a lot of kind of like regional based meetups, dinners, etc. Us at SINC, we do that, a ton of those. We used to run, 2019, we ran 149 dinners for CIOs and CISOs alike across the country, right? Insane numbers, but that's the desire, the ability to get together and kind of share in common challenges, interests, whatever it may be. And I know people are itching to kind of get back to that as well. So thank you very much. Carlos referenced something there as well, looking for some champions and kind of like friendlies to a certain extent. So I'm keen to get your perspective and thoughts on how you can utilize and lean on kind of existing friendlies within your customer base or your prospect base or partners, whatever, to help build and help grow the group. And especially when it comes to that important word that Carlos brought up as well, moderation. Moderation is key of these communities. So I'm keen to hear your thoughts on tactics people can use just to kind of lean on some existing friends that can help drive the collaboration within those communities.
Yeah, certainly. I think everyone's been using the keyword advocate. So I don't think advocates just happen overnight. You have to build towards it, right? It takes time to build their trust. You have to make sure they have a positive user experience, not only with you, but also with the company and in the solution that they implement. It comes over time, and it's just something that you can tell who are your advocates. I think we start with, you can have your business level, C-level customer advisory council. Let's have that. Then you can have a technical advisory council, and then it blossoms from there. They could be like your first, like you said, your top 50. Mm-hmm. Maybe they're your top 20. And by the way, this also happens with the channel as well. You're the leader of the pack, partner advisory council. It all blossoms from there. They all want to communicate. Yes, they're competitors, but at the end of the day, they want to learn from each other. It's a peer-to-peer white glove discussion. Once you get down to another level, it could be the day-to-day managerial, individual contributors. That's when they start to want to localize communities. Okay, let them run it. Let them host it. As a vendor, we are there to support you. We'll provide you with some budget. We'll provide you with some subject matter experts. But at the end of the day, let them run it. And if you come from a large company, I came from Symantec, very, very large. We had probably 5 or 6 different product families. You could start to have community leaders by product family. Let them run it out in the regions. Have your local SC kind of be the host, just kind of make sure everything goes on track. And then we start to build up outside of the geographies. And then once a year, you pull them all together, and that's how you have your annual user group session. Okay. By the way, that's a business side. I want to tell you another example. It's actually a lot of fun. And I'm a big sponsor. I'm sure Julie is as well. And, women in cybersecurity. The statistics are really low at this point. And first and foremost, there's over 3x the amount of open positions right now in 2021. And it's going to get worse. So at Symantec, we have this group internally called SWAN, Symantec Women Action Network. Ton of fun. It started out with our CIO, who's a female, you know. She started gathering leaders from each functional groups. We used to meet up, you know, just informally. And we started building up the group, all sorts of different topics. Then it started going from HQ in Mountain View to the other regions in the sales offices and everything like that. And we would always find a sponsor. But what was interesting about this group is that then we started, hey, if we're going through these topics, I'm sure the other Bay Area companies, and we had nothing to do with cybersecurity. And then we used to have these, you know, roundtable discussions. They're kind of like speed dating, but we would offer our campus open, and we would invite Cisco, VMware, other companies coming together, same type of dialogue. And then we used to rotate in each other campuses. It was a ton of fun. And then we would branch off with other networks within other high tech, because there were topics like, you know, how do you get as an individual contributor, how do you get to that director level? From a director, how do you become a VP? How do you walk into tough situations where you have to make tough decisions? How do you write up performance reviews? You know, there was all sorts of topics, but it's such a great network, because today we still communicate with each other, and it's just fabulous. It's just a ton of fun. You know, when you find something that you're really passionate about, you just don't think about it, and you're really out there to help each other out.
Definitely. It builds an element of trust as well. We go back to that word of camaraderie, right? But that trust is so important within the community. The trust that the information you share isn't necessarily going to be shared outside of those four walls. The trust in that, you know, the information you share with people, kind of like you receive that back from people giving back to the community as well. So I think that's a really important element. And to your point, you know, the community can have a sole focus, but it's okay to deviate away from that focus in order to help the community thrive a little bit further, right? And introducing kind of like different topics of discussion or different experiences and environments outside of the primary focus, I think is key, because otherwise, you know, all work and no play, right? So thank you very much. Now we do have some questions coming in, and some of them are obviously pertinent to the next stage of the discussion around managing communities as well. Carlos, I want to come to you here, because I know that you've got an opinion around platforms, right? So one of the attendees here mentions, how do you handle proliferation of communities? Some are on Slack, some are on product forums, some are on Premier Expert communities like MVP programs, et cetera, so talk to us a little about how you handle that. And I'd also like to get your opinion as well on the importance selecting the right platform to help facilitate that community collaboration.
Yeah, sure. I think there's a big question, which is you ideally want something to be frictionless. And so if you want it to be frictionless, you might go where the eyeballs are. And so I think on average, we spend 145 minutes a day on social right now. So you might go, well, instinctively, shall I create a LinkedIn group or a Facebook group? But obviously, that community is completely outside your hands. We all know how friendly Facebook's been, how it went overnight and took away 98% of access to company pages. So there's a real risk attached to having a network sit on someone else's platform that, should their algorithm change overnight, suddenly it's not valuable in any way, shape or form to you or to the members. And so there's a real risk of going, all right, well, I'll do what's easy, I'll go where the eyeballs are, but then basically leaving yourself exposed later on. Obviously, the reverse of that is assuming that if you have a great platform and someone comes to your website, they will come. You need to build that community, you need to build access, you need to build real value. And so actually, I'm not convinced by either at the moment. I'm not convinced by either having a social platform space or by the actual sort of build your own. I know there's a few platforms that specialize in this. We've done the rounds, we've played with all of them. I love the thinking, I love the functionality. I think it's beautiful, I think it's great. But I sort of go back to some of the things where someone like LinkedIn can't work out groups. They can't work out how to manage groups properly. If anyone's got a good LinkedIn group, I've not met one yet. So I think there's a part of going, have we assumed because of the pandemic that people will really want the online version, or is it actually going back to when we can be in person? That's the true value. And is it the in person that brings the online to life? So if you have to build a purely online environment, post-pandemic, when people can be in person, will they really go there? Will there really be that value? Now, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm just not able to do it. Maybe it's one of those things where other people have been able to build communities, or our audience doesn't relate in the same way. I'm just not totally convinced that a digital community is great. I think it's great. The great strength of it comes from the in-person, from the real engagement. And so it's in-person first, online second. Now, I have seen some good Slack communities. I do think Slack can serve a purpose. And I go back to the sort of friction between, yes, you use LinkedIn a lot. A lot of people obviously use Slack day to day. So again, it's sort of fairly frictionless, but at the same time, it's still it's still another space that you do risk building something valuable that, unless you're prepared to pay £7 per head membership, can sort of escalate pretty quickly as well. So where I'm basically at when it comes to online communities is, I think they can be valuable, but I think they are 10 times more valuable when they're tied to in-person. And my big thing is, I wouldn't trust any social platform with my community.
Fair enough. But again, some great points there. I think it's in person, as we know, people are longing to come back to it. It's effectively managing that community when you're not in person, right? It's keeping those people engaged so that when you run those in-person events, you've got a community to go to, for example, and say, right, we're going to meet up, we're going to do this, we're going to do this. And the attendance then is very, very seamless, right? I think that's where, even having run conferences, dinners, whatever, for the best part of 12 years in the IT space here, the question we're always posed is, how can we continue this conversation outside of the four walls of this event? How can we keep this conversation going? And to your point, LinkedIn was that place to begin with, but became so diluted in value when everyone under the sun was able to create a group. You're inviting, and in the first instances, you're kind of looking for notifications, and after a while, it's just deleting the emails as they come in. So platform is key. Again, big advocate for Slack here. I think it's great. It's a desktop. You get the notifications, people contributing, you can go in there and jump in whenever you please, and it's very seamless, to your point. But it's not the be all and end all, right? So I would like to throw this question over to Julie here, given that you've kind of lived a few different lives where communities have been important. But attendee asks, how can a community manager or community management effectively collect the information from its network? There is so much information flowing in. We tend to lose on so many good ideas. So what's the best way of capturing that collaboration?
That is $1 million question right there. And I think too, depending upon the number of platforms that you have or conduits into the organization, it also, potentially multiplies from there, right? So to me, I found the way that we were able to collect information, right? So Slack was for the technology champions, and there was a subset, they kind of tapped out at 100, and you could easily see, feedback coming in. A bunch of different people in the company were responding, taking those good nuggets back into product or into marketing or into sales, wherever the feedback, was being directed. Then there's the bigger community, right? So Lithium, and then Incited, and that was tens of thousands. I think our last, before I left, was probably 100. We had crossed over 100,000, members on the platform, and who knows where it's sitting right now. And that becomes challenging. And so I think you do want to look at the back end of whatever platform you're investing in and think about, what is the data that you want to collect that's either going to help drive the business and therefore justify the investment, because these things, as Carlos mentioned, can very quickly add up. You want to be thinking about, what is the growth that I expect, because you're probably paying by user, by member, and negotiate the heck out of that, early on, because if you're wildly successful, it's sort of the good news, bad news of that investment, right? And you're going to have to invest more. But just really make sure when you understand sort of what's underneath the hood that will allow you to collect the insights that you need. And I hear you, because if it's discussion groups, it may be challenging to get your arms around all of those good nuggets, especially if you're one community manager, dealing with tens of thousands of people that are sharing great ideas. So that's where I think the tiered approach can sometimes help too, because if you've got that group of 100 super users, hopefully they're they are being reflective of what's in the community at large, but then, you know, look for the analytics and the knobs you can turn behind the platform you're investing in to see if it meets your needs for the information that you're trying to harvest. Like, where are these people coming from? How many countries? You know, what's the kind of persona makeup of who's in your community? If there's a way for you to justify, like in the case of a product company, are we able to offload questions that are going into the support organization? You know, that kind of helps justify and fuel the investment in an online platform, right? So some of those business conversations, you need to be able to figure out, how do I articulate that too, so that I can go back and ask for more if we're wildly successful and we're truly seeing an offload in cases that are having to go into the support organization, that we're actually able to solve those challenges and have the community answer those questions instead. So I guess I just echo, there's empathy there. When you make your investment, see what you can get for the analytics that you need. And then if you're a mighty community manager of one, how can you bring more people from the organization into those chat discussions so that you are harvesting as many of those great nuggets as you can back into the places of the organization that are relevant?
Some fantastic
Great.
advice there, folks. Thank you very much. May, another question here from the audience here. How do you measure community impact?
I'm a business person. And we're also growing in this hyper growth stage. So yes, voice of the customer. Always love champions, right? Champions are the ones that are selling for you when you're not there. Like to get those calls going to other customers or into their fabulous industry analysts folks. Also like to measure customer renewals. You know, these are existing customers. What's our renewal rate? How are we expanding those existing customers? And certainly with those existing advocates, how many net new logos are we getting out of that? Our pipeline creation, you know? So those are some key measures I'm looking at. Certainly we want to do community so we could get some feedback in general. It'll help with product roadmap strategy, where we need to focus, what's hot out there, it's a validation point, and things that we may not have thought about, right? So those are some of the key things.
Excellent, thank you very much. Another question here coming in. Do you feel there is a difference in approach for functional leaders, i.e. CISO versus board execs, i.e. CFO, CIO, etc.? I'll start before I hand it over to the panel if anyone wants to jump in, but yes, there is a big difference. We spoke before about the level of collaboration I see amongst the CISO community versus the CIO community. CISOs are all fighting the same fight. CIOs are trying to create a tech roadmap that helps them beat their competitors. So the level of information that is shared there, first and foremost, is going to be very, very, very different. Okay, and so therefore, the type of conversations you want to try and cultivate and foster within the CIO community are going to be more just from a general kind of role of the CIO strategic level. How does IT align with the business versus what tech are you going to implement so that you can better understand your customers, read that information, and provide them better products, right? Nike don't want to share that with Adidas. It's not going to happen. So there's an element there where you've got to understand your communities as well. But again, I want to throw this up to the panel. I very rarely throw it up because you run into the risk of crickets, but throw it up to the panel to see if somebody also has a little bit of insight on how you can differentiate the approach based on different kind of roles that these individuals may have within different communities.
Mm-hmm.
I'll jump in if you like.
Go for it. Go for it.
Sort of drawing back on my point around sort of digital and in person, I think what I certainly observe in our specific industry around sort of more marketing directors to CMOs is I see more collaboration in the intimate sort of exclusive type of dinner experience in person. And when it comes to online, then from a practitioner perspective, so in our world, sort of a marketing operations specialist or sort of more of a technical marketer on the ground, they collaborate a hell of a lot and they're very open. They take a lot of pleasure in sort of moaning and gripes about the same technology vendors and being honest with each other. I feel that from the CMO marketing director type level, there is some collaboration, probably slightly less, but once they're in kind of a more sort of Chatham House rules type environment, then there is good collaboration. I had a really fantastic example where we went out to a very lovely, fantastic dinner, and there was somebody from BT and someone from Sky, and they were loving the conversation. And literally halfway through, they went, "We probably shouldn't be talking quite how we are," but they carried on nonetheless, right? Because online, there's a digital footprint. It's very specific. You're leaving something open and exposed. Whereas if you're in a sort of intimate environment and you're face to face, then it's something slightly different. So I think there's also a bridge around how you're engaging, what is the community environment as well.
Yeah.
Very good point. Very good point indeed. Okay, so as we kind of round the corner to the final stretch, just want to switch the focus to, all right, this is all great. We've established why communities are important. We've established how we can start building these communities. We've established how we can start managing these communities effectively as well. But ultimately, what's the end goal? So this is a question I'm going to ask for each of the panelists, just to kind of like leave the discussion on today as we start to close things out. And Julia, I started with you at the beginning, so I'll start with you with the final question as well. How do you ultimately turn all of this into revenue for your organization? And follow on to that, is that even necessary to turn it into money, or is there value in just trying to create more of an open source environment, so to speak?
So again, I think it comes back to your goals as an organization and where you are in your life as an organization, right? So May had some great examples, right? Renewals, if you already have a run rate business and you are a subscription kind of offering, you want to make sure you're keeping your renewals strong. In the case of both Nutanix and Attack IQ, we're both companies that are transforming the way things used to be done, right? And so there's a big evangelism component to that. And there's a big brand awareness component to that. And so for us as a cybersecurity company, it's basically trying to show the world, hey, you invested in a gajillion security defenses. How do you know they're actually working? Well, we're like the CISO's Fitbit, or we're helping you figure out if the health of your stack is actually worth the investment that you made. And if it's working continually, always on to protect you, and that you're going to find something before the bad guys do, right? And so a big part of this strategy for us is to build those advocates that love transforming and disrupting. And they know that there is probably a better way to do this. And just like automation has transformed other industries, here's an opportunity to bring automation into cybersecurity. And so our community strategy right now is sort of twofold. It is, driving industry knowledge and education, not product knowledge, but like things like purple teaming and how to operationalize MITRE ATT&CK and things that our community really cares about doing. And then also fostering this group of individuals that wants to be part of a transformation story. So I'm going to be looking at people who are engaged advocates. We've used the word advocates quite a bit here, who want to be part of building this company too, because it's an emerging space, it's an emerging category, and it's exciting to be part of a transformation story. So for me, it's many of the things that May mentioned, but we're so early stage. It's also about brand building and punching above our weight class and feeling a lot bigger than a 100-person company in the marketplace. And some of those things are really just priceless as a marketing leader.
Thank you very much. And May, same question to you with a little bit of extra flavor. Again, we talk about monetizing, but what are the other benefits of a community? For example, you spoke about customer advisory boards, right? I mean, that's crucial in product development. So talk to us a little bit how people can extract additional value outside of just generating revenue from these things.
Yeah, from a customer standpoint, they want to be part of something that, they want to be able to be a thought leader, right? And a lot of times they want to talk to, their peers in other organizations. It could be a completely different vertical, right? And so you want to get them all together. And then on top of that, like for me, I get called a lot about, hey, let's go, there's so many dinners you could go to, 5 days a week. And it's interesting, the ones that you gravitate are the ones that you can actually contribute, you believe in it, you can contribute to something, and then you're going to meet cool people, right? You want to meet other people that have a similar background or something you can learn from, build your own community and network, and then you can learn something from them, and then you can cascade that information to someone else. So I do feel like there's a lot there. And of course, when you have, maybe it's those annual events, you could give them a ticket to it. Maybe you could give them a speaking platform. Maybe you could give some things to their technical folks, in their staff, that we do offer a 5-day academy class, no charge. But other places where I've come from, you could give them credits for attending some of those sessions, because I think technical folks love getting, their credits, and, you see them all over LinkedIn and all that. But I don't know, there's just different things. But, when I think about the stage that we're in, just like Julie mentioned, I only have so many resources, budget and budget, people, time. So I have to really be very particular in where we assign some of our resources, be the moderators. And we got to make sure that, yes, it's one thing to have a community, but we do have to make sure we're getting some value out of it. It is contributing to our pipeline, helping with our renewals and expansion and everything like that.
Thank you very much. And Carlos, I'll come to you for some final words of wisdom again. How can you monetize this, but also for those, again, who are kind of in those early stages or not kind of looking to manage communities, what do you feel that they risk missing out on?
Yeah, I think that the main thing you might miss out, well, actually, just one on the monetization side of things, I think there's some great points made already. My only one on top would be specifically from kind of producing research papers. And when you're trying to find kind of those survey responses, I think having that highly engaged audience would mean speed of response, but also the ability to then give something back that's very valuable to that community. So I like very much the idea of bringing sort of the research part of the business much closer to the community and creating that as kind of a cycle to give back. I mean, that in itself is a product, but also something that's very value add for those that are part of it. Sorry, what was the second part of your question?
What do they risk missing out on if they're not looking to try and build and manage these communities already?
I think the big one that May mentioned is retention. I think there's the risk that, is it just another license? Are you just another license, another vendor? Or do you create a level of relationship and association? And it might not even be with employees of your organization, but it may be of other members, and by their very nature, that association, that trust element grows from it. So if you get value from something completely unrelated to your product offering whatsoever, you associate it still. And so any value, any community learning that you get is a positive that you miss out on if somebody else is out there doing this. But my only one thing is just going back to that point of, if you're going to do it, is there somebody else already doing it that you might want to partner with? I think there is a risk of just adding another community, another space, another bit of noise, and not really sort of doing either or, neither really having an impact or actually providing anything of value.
Thank you very much. Well, that brings us to an end of the discussion. I do apologize, we ran over about 10 minutes time, but that was fantastic. I did not want to break the stride there. Some real great information shared from each of the panelists. So thank you all very much for your participation and greatly appreciate it. And thank you all attendees for taking the time to get in and submit your questions as well. We hope you found this session of value. There will be a recording made available for on-demand viewing. So obviously, if you want to rewatch this or share this with any colleagues, you have the ability to do so. Folks, if you're not aware of MarTech Alliance, go check it out, what Carlos and the team are doing over there. Some really, really cool stuff, really great information being shared on a regular basis, and a great community forming as well amongst this marketing community. So thank you all very much. Really appreciate your time. As always, we long to do these in person, but for the time being, your participation and your support in attending these virtual gatherings is fantastic. So we look forward to welcome you to another SINC live webinar sometime soon. In the meantime, please, wherever you may be, stay safe, stay healthy, and we will speak to you all very, very soon. Thank you, panelists. Thank you, attendees. All the best.
Thank you.
Thank you.